Learn about getting your degree debt-free with Denise Thomas.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello, and welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have a great interview with Denise Thomas. She is a debt-free college coach. She has a podcast called Debt-Free Degree, and she runs a consulting and coaching practice at Get Ahead of the Class. So she's got a lot of great information. She's been helping students for years. She actually started by helping her own family figure out how to plan and pay for college. She got a wealth of information, and she's going to talk about things like scholarships and other ways to avoid debt while paying for college. So I'm not going to steal the thunder. We'll go ahead and jump right into the episode. As always, we have show notes available at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/149. All right, today I'm sitting down with Denise Thomas. She's the debt-free college coach. Welcome, Denise.
Brad, thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's great. I think this is a topic that most parents are going to really latch onto. So I guess before we jump into the meat, let's talk a little bit about how you became the debt-free college coach, and kind of a little bit of your story, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, I'll be honest with you. It was by desperation for the most part. We were like most every American family out there. We expected our kids to go to college, but didn't save a dime. It's just the way we live. You know, we spend what we have. We get those bonuses. And instead of putting it aside for college, we buy a new car or a big screen TV or whatever. It's just not something we are ingrained to do. And that's unfortunate, because by the time our kids are getting close to the college years, anything can happen. Even for us, I didn't realize this, but my husband had assumed we would pay for college with our retirement. We had a lot of money invested, and we could have retired at age 40. But then we had some severe financial problems. My husband was laid off. He was able to get another job almost immediately, but then within months was laid off again. And then the stock market crashed. We just weren't paying attention to what was going on in the world or in our industry. And life happens. And this part of life, I'm going to be honest with you, sucked. Mm-hmm. We lost everything. With the stock market crash, our so-called retirement was gone. With losing the jobs as well, we had to pay for our mortgage or mortgages. We actually owned 2 houses at the time, with what was left in savings. And that did not last very long. So we ended up having to declare bankruptcy, and this was liquidation. We had to sell everything we owned. If you could touch it, it was gone. Not long after that, as I'm recovering from this financial devastation, I realized, oh my gosh, my kids are about to start literally around the corner. How are we going to pay for college? We had no savings, no 401k to borrow against, no house to borrow equity from. And oh yes, that bankruptcy means we can't co-sign for those student loans. See, they tend to forget about that. They talk a lot about the student loan debt crisis and how expensive school is. And we always assume it's the kids who have this debt. Yes, they do have the debt, but I promise you, the majority of that debt, their parents or grandparents are co-signing for it, meaning it's 100% yours, just as it is 100% for your kid. Well, this bankruptcy took that off the table for us. So now what would we do? In addition, I had another hoop to jump through. I was homeschooling my kids. How are they going to even be accepted to college? I started doing the research, Brad, and one of the things that came across was that 70% of college students graduate with some amount of student loan debt. But I can do the math. That means 30% are graduating debt-free. How the heck are they doing it? What do we know? What do we not know that they know, right? How come the media isn't talking about this? So I set out to figure out what these kids were doing, what was different that they were debt-free. And it doesn't matter what the economy is doing. This is every year. For decades, it's about 30%. It might change 1% on either side, but it's about 30% every year graduating debt-free. And another thing that I found that was quite interesting, a lot of stuff we believe about that 30% is not true. And I hear it all the time. Well, if you're a student athlete, you get free school. No, they don't. If you're a genius, you get free school. Not usually. Well, if you're destitute, you get free school. Not necessarily. Again, we believe these things to be true because that's what's been coming down the pike for decades. And we hear it over and over again and just assume it. But it's making these assumptions that leaves parents and teens disheartened because my kid's not a genius. He's average. My kid's not an athlete. She doesn't do any of that stuff. So how are they going to be able to go to school debt-free? Well, when I was trying to figure this out, and I'm telling you, it was thousands of hours of research, I stumbled upon some things that were eye-opening. The most important thing is to start early. And the second most important thing is to choose your colleges, your college list wisely, and choose the scholarships that your teen applies for equally as wisely. It's not rocket science. But waiting until the last minute, waiting until you've already chosen, my kid's going to XYZ school and we have a $40,000 gap. You can't make that up. You can't change it. You can't fill that gap with private scholarships. So starting early, and the earlier the better, makes an incredible difference for everyone out there. One of the stats that was eye-opening for me is that, and again, we always assume you have to be a genius to win scholarships, but the majority of private scholarships are won by kids with a 2.4 to a 2.6 GPA.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible.
Yes. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about how this works. So one of the things you mentioned was the gap. So that might be new to some listeners. So when you say a $40,000 gap, what does that mean?
That means that the school your child has chosen to attend, maybe it costs $70,000 per year with tuition, fees, room and board included. I know that might shock a few parents out there. $70K is a lot of freaking money. And yes, there are schools that cost that much money for the cost of attendance.
For sure.
So Johnny's going to attend this school that costs a lot of money. Awesome. And Johnny has awesome grades. He's got great test scores and he's had 15 AP classes and he's got almost a 4.0 with everything. Fabulous. But the school is only offering 30 grand. Well, somebody's got to come up with the 40.
Right. So it's essentially
That's
70.
your gap.
Right. The 70 minus the 30 in scholarships means there's 40 left to pay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So if our goal then is, you mentioned start early, and if our goal is to try and, get college at a reasonable price, so perhaps we can avoid scholarships, starting early doing what?
Well, let's start with how early. The first thing to remember is that I'm going to say back in the day when you and I were attending college,
Mm-hmm.
colleges were looking for the jack of all trades. And college applications for probably 99% of the schools were not submitted until mid to late senior year, January, February, March, for everyone. Today, both of those revelations, both of those assumptions are wrong. Colleges are not looking for the jack of all trades. They're looking for passion. What is it that really puts that spark in your child's eye. They're looking for, where do you fit into their campus community? How will you contribute to that community? They want to know, of course, will you pass and graduate? And your grades and test scores will show them that. And then they also are looking for, what kind of an alumni will you be? How will you as an adult reflect back on your alma mater later in life? All of these things are important to colleges, and it does show up on the application in different ways. So when I say to start early, when I mentioned that it used to be that applications were submitted almost late senior year, today, college applications are submitted sometimes as early as August 1st of the high school senior year. Your child has not stepped foot on their high school campus yet. What that means is that when they list their activities and their leadership roles, your child isn't president of XYZ club yet. They haven't started their senior year.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll be chosen for that, but they don't have senior year activities and leadership roles to list because those applications are going in early. What that means is that years ago, we would have our kids, when they'd start high school, okay, hit the ground running, join every club, see what you like, see what you don't like, and let's see if we can narrow some things down in sophomore year to 2 or 3 that you really like. And then, the next year you narrow a little further. And by senior year, you'll have a leadership role in something that you really can participate in. Well, we need to back that scenario up into middle school now. So now what I tell parents is that in middle school, this is your opportunity to offer your child as many opportunities for growth and exploration as possible. It may be that your child is attending all of the free vacation Bible schools that are available in your area, because everybody's got a different theme. And perhaps you'll offer one paid camp per summer. Just something interesting. Let them explore what their interests are. That way, by the time they start high school, they will have found something that really floats their boat, something they can really sink their teeth in and grow with. You see, on that college application, it looks a lot like a resume. There's going to be different sections: honors and awards, activities or extracurricular activities, community service, employment, and then, of course, there's the essay. So how does a college look at this list of things and figure out where your kid fits into the campus community? It's quite simple. If there is something that tends to show up in more than one category, in multiple categories, that's the key to showing the campus, showing the college that I fit in that area. For example, if Johnny loves playing chess, maybe he is the founder of the chess club at his school. Or during the COVID years, as I like to call it, he started an online chess club. That makes him founder and president. So now we've got leadership activity. What about competition? Maybe Johnny participates in chess competitions. Maybe he wins first, second, or third place in some of these competitions. That goes in the honors and awards category. I've seen parents and teens who are under the mistaken belief that the honors and awards category has to be academic. No, it doesn't. It's nice if it does. But anything that your child has been chosen out of a group of other kids, that goes in the honors and awards category. I'll give you some oddball examples here. I had one family whose child was chosen as a children's counselor for the Billy Graham Crusade. That's way out of the box. I had another who was selected by audition to participate in a pre-professional music program. These are the kinds of things that colleges are looking for. What makes you stand out? What makes you unique? So for that example with Johnny, who plays chess, he started the club, so that's leadership. He's a member of the club. He wins or participates in these chess tournaments. Perhaps goes to the local aging facility and plays chess with grandparents. Maybe he does that at some of the hospitals where they have some aging individuals who just need some company. That's community service.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see how it's easy for what it is that puts that spark in his eye can show up in multiple areas of the application. And this is something that colleges are looking for. But believing that old school thinking that they're looking for the jack of all trades, and I hear this all the time, well, they've got all these activities, and there's that assumption that you have to do a bunch of things, but you don't have to do, quote, a little bit of everything. You really mostly just need to have that one thing that makes you who you are, that one thing that really is important to you.
Right. Okay. So hypothetically, let's say that exists in our family. So we've got kids that have a focus and a passion. What's the next step, so to speak? Because I think there's a few errors that people make around that when they start selecting schools. And again, I've seen situations where, grandpa went here, dad went here, I'm going here, no matter what. And now let's make it low cost, which, you and I know that's very difficult to do because we're not, again, it takes a lot of our opportunities off the table. So can you talk a little bit more about, okay, so we've got a strong application. We've done our homework. We know how to do that well. What's the next step with that student as far as?
The next step is, I'm going to call it the student's responsibility. Your teen should know early on, and this is something parents have to do, no later, in my opinion, no later than freshman year. Parents and teens have to have the money discussion. I don't care if parents are making 6, 7, 8 figures. Do you want to pay for a piece of paper? Or would you rather give your kid a house or a car at graduation?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's doable. If your child can go to a college that wants them and will pay them to go there, then maybe that chunk of change you thought you were going to be spending on college can go towards something a little more tangible.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to, your kid wants to go to the same school that you, things are different today than they were 30 plus years ago. College is a buttload more expensive than it used to be. That sticker price is sticker shock for the vast majority of Americans. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst thing that a family can do is be stuck on a name. Because mostly if you know a name brand school, chances are they don't have an incentive to offer very many. I don't care how great your GPA is.
Right.
It's kind of like, I like to show them the difference. It's kind of like the difference between Saks Fifth Avenue and Macy's.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when's the last time I saw a really good sale at Saks. They don't have to. They don't have to entice people to come. They're going to come and spend their hard-earned dollars, whether or not they really have it to spend.
Right.
Same is true for those name brand schools.
Right. Exactly. I think name brand schools, that's
right.
I think a lot of colleges aspire to become that name brand school. That's their goal because then they have that pricing power. It's like, well,
yes,
we get more applicants than we can accommodate. So we're going to take the ones that are willing to pay.
100%. You are so correct there. And I think that we need to start looking at the entire process more like we look at buying a car. I like red.
Mm-hmm.
So when I walk into a Tesla showroom, I am all over that red car. But I also know I'm not driving out with it. I'm only there to oogle over the pretty color. We need to start looking at college as a financial decision, but it's colleges that have made it an emotional decision. That's college marketing.
Oh, and colleges haven't done it alone. We parents have done it as well.
We have.
We're complicit in it at least. But yes, the colleges definitely
we're
want it to be emotional. I would agree.
100%. And when it comes to starting early with your kids and helping them to make the right decision, doing the math is really important. Even if you want to spend that money, or even if you're going to have those loans and you've resigned yourself to that, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. What's the outcome? And I've had students that I've talked with about this. If the entry-level income for the degree program that you plan to be in is $35,000 a year, but you're going to have debt at $260,000, where on this earth does that make sense? When you do the math, Brad, this child will literally walk out of college bankrupt. She will be living on her mama's couch for the rest of her life. And unless she gets 2 additional jobs, she will never have a hope of paying that debt and living on her own.
Right.
You've got to do the math with your kids. What really makes sense? I had one client recently who, again, people tend to come to me a little later than they should, have already chosen their college. They've already been accepted. They have this gap. And although they only put in the application to this particular college to quote, oh, just a shot in the dark, let's just see. Mm-hmm. Even though they've had the discussion that said, no way, hell or high water is this possible financially. Now, Susie has this in her heart. She really wants to go to this school. She saw it, and it's just awesome.
Right. Yeah, that's something I talk with clients a lot of, when you start to look at colleges, you really need to understand, what you're looking for and that type of thing. And you need to be careful because you can say, I'm just going to the car dealer and looking at cars. But if you go there enough Saturdays in a row, eventually you're coming home with a new car. And
you are so right.
So you need to be careful with, yes, the most expensive schools, especially, have beautiful campuses and beautiful neighborhoods, and they look really good, and they're really good at selling what they have. So, and again, and many people can say, well, that's fine. I can resist the sales pitch, but can everybody in your family resist it? The student and your spouse? And because I think in a lot of cases, again, I'm not saying you shouldn't look at them, but you just need to be aware that you need to kind of talk and be very serious up front about, well, these schools are likely to be expensive. Therefore, if the numbers are high, the answer is going to be no. So don't fall in love.
Yeah. And you are 100% correct. I remember doing college tours with my daughter. And for one of the colleges, we were driving to the school and my daughter started crying. And wait, what's going on? What's wrong? She said, I'm afraid I'm going to love, and I know we can't afford it. Mm-hmm. Now, as a parent, that just hits you right here. Because that's the problem right there. We want to give our kids their greatest desire. That's so important to us as parents. And we will move mountains, but that mountain is going to be your retirement. Trust me, when your kids are in their 40s and they're still paying their debt, they are so not thinking about helping you in your retirement years. That is not on their radar.
Right. Absolutely.
So you've got to think about you first as a parent. What is your future going to look like if you're the one who is stuck with this $200,000 debt? Oh, well, Johnny's going to be, Johnny's on the note. Well, yeah, but you co-signed for it and is 100% yours as it is Johnny's. Which, by the way, for parents, by the time the kids are out of the house, you're looking to do something else with your money. Maybe you are going to buy that midlife crisis car or a second house or a summer home or take vacations worldwide. Can I tell you how awesome international travel is? It is freaking awesome. And there are buildings in other countries that are older than our entire country is. It's cool to see. You can't do that if this debt is on your own shoulders as well. Something else that needs to be understood too is that in general, if you're applying to the right schools, private schools give really good discounts. They're usually not scholarships necessarily, but they are discounts. Those discounts can be as much as 30, 40, 50% of the sticker price. That's cool, but 10% that's left, because that's what you need to be looking at. And it's not that this isn't doable, but you need to know ahead of time going in. The other thing that I want to mention is that when it comes to choosing that college list, and Brad, you do a phenomenal job of helping students with this. When it comes to choosing that college list, there are so many factors that are important. But I want to know, what's your bottom line? If we put 10 schools on your list, what is the out-of-pocket expense you're willing to come up with? Because that's what's really important. The truth is, nobody cares what the name on your diploma is.
Right, exactly. So I think that's where many families need to understand that 5 and 10 years ago, it was really a challenge to try and figure out what a college actually costs, because it's kind of like going to those stores that have all these crazy discounts, right? You go into a Kohl's, and if you have all the right coupons, you get the t-shirts are marked at $45, and nobody pays $45 for a t-shirt at Kohl's. And by the time you use all your coupons and discounts and everything else, it's a $10 t-shirt, just like at Walmart.
Which it should be in the first place, right?
Which it could have been in the first place. So I think that same thing is happening at colleges in general. Is some of them have marked up their price to compete with the big boys, so to speak, but they really can't get that as often as they'd like. Therefore, they end up providing substantial discounts, kind of like Kohl's does, right? They say, well, this is a $40 t-shirt. And at some high-end boutiques, there are $40 t-shirts, but not the Kohl's t-shirt that we're talking about, of course. It's, one cut above Walmart, maybe. And therefore, nobody wants to pay $40 for it. But again, you add up all your discounts, and generally you don't. Now, so then the savvy shopper says, well, I'm not going to Kohl's unless I've got all my discounts and points and whatever else, my Kohl's cash or whatever else that you can collect up, and all in order so that I can get a reasonable price. Well, that's the same thing you need to be doing around the colleges, is you need to understand the game, get everything lined up, and understand that, well, for the right students, some of these schools will give us substantial discounts. But we got to figure out, am I the right student? Because you may not be the right student at this college, but you may be the right student at that college. And that challenge, I think, is where a lot of families need to understand that that alone takes quite a bit of work. And that's kind of on the parents. Most students aren't going to be able to figure that out. They're just not wise to the world as they should be to have any idea how that works.
And this is not their job. I know parents especially, think that's their job, but it's not. If parents would understand what it is that makes one child more enticing than another to offer not only admissions, but to offer some type of scholarship or discount, a lot of what makes this work is understanding the quote ranking system. Now, I'm going to just throw this out there real quick. It means diddly squat. The U.S. News and World Report college rankings that comes out every year has nothing to do with educational quality or student outcomes. That is not even part of the ranking at all. Some of the criteria the colleges themselves are manipulating to help them grow that ranking for themselves. Matter of fact, there's one criteria, they literally vote for each other. It's crazy. But for example, one of the criteria that they are ranked on is average entry freshman test score, ACT and SAT score. Well, how do they manipulate that? Well, prior to COVID, only 10% of the thousands of colleges and universities in the U.S. were test optional for admissions. Why would they have done that? Well, these are the top, quote, schools who were test optional. Why? Because if you think about it logically, The only kids not submitting their test scores are the ones who have crappy scores. I'm just laying it out there for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the college cannot submit scores they don't have. If they don't have these scores in their average automatically increases. That is a way of manipulating that particular statistic.
Right. Well, and again,
Another one that they manipulate.
but
Yeah,
and they're also
exactly.
manipulating by saying, "Oh, here's kids with high test scores. Let's go get them." And again, so fair or not, sometimes test scores are what the college likes about you. And
Right.
it's like, okay, these kids are going to bring up our average. These are the ones that get the better scholarship.
Correct. Same is true for when you see the ratio of number of applicants to number of seats that they actually can fill. Some of these higher status schools will have 5%, 7%, 10% admission rate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why is it that they have 200,000 applicants and only 1,500 seats? Aha. Because they have purchased the list of students, name, address, and email from ACT.org and College Board. They send emails, postcards, and letters to these kids saying, "You're so wonderful. Apply to our school. Here's a coupon code and you can apply for free. We'll waive the application fee." Well, what kid's not going to throw their name in the hat just for grins?
Mm-hmm.
This is how they manipulate some of these opportunities. So it's important that parents understand that college rankings mean absolutely nothing as far as the educational quality of what they're getting for their dollars and the amount of money their kid will get when they're employed. Doesn't work the way we think it does. Matter of fact, there was a survey with, I think it was something like 6,000 employers across the U.S., across just a ridiculous number of fields, surveyed the hiring area and asked, okay, so how important is it, the college ranking that your applicants have? Nada, nothing, don't care.
Right. Yes, for sure.
Not at all.
So, all right. So when you say start early, I guess you mentioned, well, making sure your students are doing their extracurriculars and that type of thing. Are there other things that families should be doing
Absolutely.
early, so to speak? And then define early for these other things that we might be doing.
Well, I like to say, how early people will ask, well, how early should we start applying for scholarships? How early should we be worried about XYZ or doing whatever? Truth is, the earlier the better. The second you ask that question is when you should be doing something, because that's the first time you thought about it. Private scholarships begin as early as kindergarten, as weird as that is. And that's college scholarships, not scholarships to some local, paid high school or whatever.
And what's a private scholarship?
Private scholarships are scholarships that are offered not by the school your child attends, but by pretty much anybody else. It could be corporations. It could be individuals or alumni from a particular school. It could be nonprofits. Basically, anyone can offer scholarships, any business. And those scholarships range anywhere from $250, it's about the lowest I've ever seen, to $20,000 or even $50,000 for the rare ones. Mm-hmm. The good news is that anyone can win, but you've got to start somewhere. And waiting until, now we have a $40,000 gap, as we mentioned earlier, is a little late to fill that gap. But in starting early, it's not just applying for scholarships. It's understanding how to study. Let's get those grades up, right? Because GPA matters to the colleges when they're offering scholarships. Test scores matter. ACT, SAT, the PSAT exam. The PSAT exam is taken in the junior year of high school. It's a one-shot exam to be eligible for the National Merit Scholarship. Mm-hmm. Now, I have heard counselors say, don't bother worrying about that. Don't study for it. It is just only geniuses win that scholarship, only valedictorians. Really? No. It is one of the easiest, in my opinion, to win. And here's why. A lot of families have heard, well, we need local scholarships because there's fewer applicants. True. And although national merit is considered a national scholarship, you're only competing against the students in your own state.
Mm-hmm.
You have just made it, 1 out of 50 chance rather than, whatever. All of these exams, PSAT, ACT, SAT, they are not an IQ test.
Mm-hmm.
It's a multiple choice test. So when a parent or teen tells me, oh, I don't test well, Johnny doesn't test well. Really? You've got a 3.8 GPA? I call BS. There's no way. This is a multiple choice exam, these exams. And the number of kids with perfect scores increases every year. Why? Because they're learning the test. They're learning the strategies. And they're taking the tests multiple times. I used to hear, and still do occasionally, hear a high school counselor say, oh, don't take it more than a couple of times. It looks bad. For who?
Right.
Only 10% of the colleges and universities request all of the exam scores you've ever.
Right.
But if the bottom line is the bottom line for you, if you're after the money, which I am, who cares how many times you take it? The key is this, though, Brad. Don't just take it to be taking it. If, for example, if your child has an English exam on Friday, gets a C, God help him, but the teacher says, hey, Johnny, you want to retake that test on Monday? Is Johnny going to play video games with his friends all weekend long? Or is he going to open that book and study his butt off to retake that test?
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. You can study for these exams.
Right. Exactly. And I'm not a test expert, but I think a lot of people need to understand that there's different aspects of the test. One is your test taking ability. Do you know when to guess? Do you know how fast you need to go? Do you realize that, the math gets harder as you go along? And then there's the quick fixes of, well, you just got to brush up on your comma rules and you got to understand triangles better or something like that. And then there's well, you just didn't pay attention in school. So you kind of need to learn math. I mean, A to Z, right? I mean, there's different levels of, and you could
exactly
go to tutoring and learn all of geometry and all of algebra and that type of thing so that you score better in math. But many kids already know that. They just don't know how to do the math section as well as they could have if they knew when to guess and how to guess and when to read the answers before the questions. There's all kinds of different techniques, and not every technique works for everyone. And then, of course, there's the whole test optional now, which throws another wrinkle into it. But I think, again, all these areas, and that's where I think starting early is, okay, well, learning all about that it is, one small piece of the puzzle. And the sooner you understand it, the better.
Well, I'll give you another example. There was a study done years ago utilizing the PSAT exam. And what this did, it was an entire state, and they had, your control group versus your test group here. The PSAT exam in their freshman year for practice, took it again in their sophomore year for practice, and then took it in junior year when it counts for the national merit, as opposed to, quote, everybody else who only takes it in their junior year. The results were astounding. The students who had taken it for practice had gotten a score that was 15 points higher than those who were taking it cold for the first time. Mm-hmm. That is a significant increase for the PSAT exam. And this was just taking it for practice. They weren't even studying for it. That state now requires their sophomores to take this exam for practice. And here's the other catch. After this study came out, the College Board, who is the one who writes the PSAT and the SAT exam, came out with a PSAT 8-9 and a PSAT 10 exam. So something, quote, to practice for the 8th or 9th graders or the 10th graders. But here's the problem. The study was done using the original exam that only juniors take, that 11th grade PSAT.
Mm-hmm.
The 8, 9, and the 10 PSAT are easier. They're dumbed down. They're intended for 8th and 9th graders. They're intended for 10th graders and what those children have learned in school. Just as the PSAT exam expected for 11th graders is a little easier than the SAT exam intended more or less for 12th graders. So if you're going to have your children take those exams early to practice, take the real one. Take the actual PSAT. Have them have the experience, not just practicing at home, but the experience of going to a school they've never been to a classroom they've never been to, and take this exam and learn not only the test and how it's run, but be able to start ignoring all of those extraneous sounds that are going to go on around them during these exams. You see, when kids take these tests early, and in my opinion, more often than what is being advised, they not only learn the test, they learn the test well enough to, when the teacher at the front of the room says, go, these students who have been practicing don't have to spend the time reading the instructions. They jump straight to the questions. Now, why is that important? Because everyone else is taking this extra time, and your kid doesn't have to take that extra time. Those instructions, those directions never change. It's always the same.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, in taking these exams multiple times in that environment, by the time it counts, 2 things have taken place. Number one, this isn't new to them. This is old hat. They're not stressed. Like everyone else, this is a high stakes exam for them. It's a once and done because their teachers, their parents, their counselors said, only take it once or twice. Your child has taken it so many times, it's no big deal.
Right.
So they don't have that stress. But in addition, they have taken it in that environment enough to not be thrown by other kids tapping their pencil on the table, or even kicking the back of their chair, or rustling, getting their coat on or off, or blowing their nose, or rain on a tin roof. All of these things are important parts of the strategy for getting those higher scores. And why is that important? Because those higher scores and your GPA are what colleges are looking for. It increases their rankings. They are more apt to give larger discounts and scholarships to entice your child to come to their school.
Right. All right. Well, that was, we've got a lot of great information. People want to learn more about what you do and how you do it. How do people get a hold of you? You have a website. Can you tell us some of that stuff, please?
Awesome. Be happy to. I can be reached at getaheadoftheclass.com. That's getaheadoftheclass.com. That's my homepage. And there is a really cool spreadsheet, or rather checklist, that most families are going to want. It's 12 scholarship secrets. These are tips from prestigious scholarship judges. It's a list of what not to do when submitting scholarship and college applications. So before you hit that submit button, check the checklist.
Mm-hmm. Great. I appreciate it. All right. That's a lot of good information, and hopefully people will reach out, and I'm sure we're going to stay in touch. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you, Brad, for having me on.
All right. That was a great episode where we learned a ton about paying for college without using debt, and scholarships and other great strategies. Obviously, these strategies that we've talked about aren't right for everyone, and some people ultimately will end up paying for some or all of college. But if you're the type of family that is willing to do the hard work and really work at it, a debt-free degree is certainly within the possibility for many families. We appreciate any sort of reviews that you can give us at Apple, iTunes, or wherever you're getting your podcasts. That's all we have for this week. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns two companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.